NextGen Talks is an initiative of PwC Nigeria's NextGen Club, featuring family business owners, NextGens, successful entrepreneurs, and professionals. NextGen Talks, shaping the African family business narrative.
Welcome to episode 3 of NextGen Talks, an initiative of PwC Nigeria's NextGen Club. My name is Chinasa Kenogu, and I'm the host for PwC Nigeria's NextGen Talks. The COVID-19 pandemic, like never before, proved the vital importance of strong digital capabilities for businesses. But only 1 in 5 family businesses say their digital transformation journey is advanced, though they continue to believe digitization is a top priority. In the 2018 PwC Family Business Survey, 80% were worried about innovation and technology. This suggests strongly that, as imperative as it may seem, family business still struggle with adapting to the use of technological innovations, a situation that usually occurs as a result of generational differences. On that note, the topic for this episode is digitizing the family business, getting the buy-ins. Joining me shortly on this episode of NextGen Talks is a young Nigerian entrepreneur who's made strides in the technology space and understands the importance of digital transformation. But first, listen to our NextGen Talks nugget for this episode.
Moving faster along a digital journey requires an understanding of the value of data and analytical tools, as well as a commitment to upskilling your workforce. You should also recognize that digital transformation must be a part of a cultural shift that is supported by highly engaged leaders.
Our guest for this episode of NextGen Talks is Iyinoluwa Aboyeji, also known as Iyi. Iyi is the general partner and co-founder of Future Africa, a platform that provides capital, coaching, and community for mission-driven innovators. He is passionate about partnering with missionary talent and capital to build an African future. Iyi spent the last few years as the CEO of Flutterwave, a business building payments technology and infrastructure to connect Africa to the global economy. Prior to helping co-found and lead Flutterwave, Iyi co-founded Andela, Africa's largest engineering organization with over 1,000 software engineers, which has received investments from Mark Zuckerberg and Google Ventures, amongst others. Iyi holds a bachelor's degree in legal studies from the University of Waterloo, and he sits on the board of several institutions, including Paris's Share Africa Project, Rainbow Educational Services Limited, and Filmo Reality. He is a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, and a member of Nigeria's Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council. Welcome, Iyi, and thank you very much for coming on NextGen Talks.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Fantastic. So we'll just go right into it. You heard our NextGen Talks nugget for this episode, and I would just like you to share your thoughts on this part of the nugget, which is you should also recognize that digital transformation must be a part of a cultural shift that is supported by highly engaged leaders. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Chinasa. The reality is, when people think about digital transformation, there's always an attempt to make it look like what is required for the business to become another business.
Right.
But that's not the idea, right? The idea really is that, a business is transforming itself, recognizing that there are changes in society,
right,
led by technology, that it has to adapt its business to. And that's what the big idea is when it comes to digital transformation. But for that to happen, right, the groundwork has to be, first of all, an understanding of your users and their changing needs, right? And that's why the engagement is actually the most important. But secondarily, it then has to be backed up with a workforce that has an understanding of the changing needs of your customers, right?
Sure.
And has a grasp of new ideas and new thinking and new paradigms for solving the problems that they have. There are solutions that parents would never have considered to problems that we face today.
Yeah.
But because we're young and we have a certain way of doing things or thinking about things, we're willing to consider these out of whack solutions. And they sometimes very much happen to work. So you do need those young people that are going to suggest the ideas of the time as solutions to problems.
Fantastic. And it's interesting that you talk about not seeing it as a new business, but in truth, maybe making it even better, making it more efficient, enabling the business. And that's maybe the narrative that needs to be sold to the older generation, and maybe that's their fear. You do realize that, the topic we're discussing today is digitizing the family business, getting the buy-ins, understanding that the older generation are a little bit reluctant to embrace these sort of technological changes or innovations as they were, and the next gens whom are digital natives, so to speak, are more eager to toe this path. But COVID has shown us that we don't really have a choice, right? So before I go into more questions, I would just like for you to, share your experience with us as an entrepreneur and your views on digital transformation.
So what I've learned, in my time in business is that the biggest focus has to be the customer, regardless of what kind of business you are.
Okay.
You really just have to be extremely in tune with the needs of the customer, with the changing needs of the customer, and with where the customer needs to be to be able to even generate more revenue, to continue to be grateful to you for the service and to continue being a bigger customer. And in realizing that, I think whatever kind of business you are, there are different kinds of advantages and disadvantages. So, with many family businesses, the things that make them excellent, are sometimes things that also make them tricky places. You have on one hand, it's length of service, lots of generations of acquired skill in a particular business. Understanding how things work, building things. These things are very important.
Right.
But the other side of the house, to be very honest, is tough to retain talent. There's nowhere for them to go.
Right.
It's a family business, so that's where the family's going to run it. They're sometimes very conservative because it's just their entire family. You can't take the kind of risks that you can take with somebody else's business.
Right.
Like that.
Okay.
And I think what really helps on the journey of digital transformation is really understanding that things happen at your own pace, right?
Right.
And rush you into a digital transformation journey. However, you can take baby steps in advancing towards digital transformation. Sometimes it's investing in an adjacent business as a family, just to see what these young people are up to.
Right.
Sometimes it's working with a small company, a startup, to improve your process in some way or the other. These are things you can do to add up to this family business. So, my experience is really that focus on the customer has to be at the center. Where they are, where they need to go, what needs to get done. The people around that are very important, right? Particularly the family and how willing they are to push for more from their customers and their customers.
Right.
And then, but most importantly, right, the idea generally should just be, small experiments and then scale up what works and kill what doesn't. The willingness to do that is really key to transform.
Fantastic. You're sharing your perspective and your experience as an entrepreneur, and you did mention that, in your time, you have had the opportunity of working or being exposed to family businesses. And I think one question I'd like to ask is, in that experience, have you seen that challenge where one generation is trying to digitize the business and where the older generation is reluctant to accept it? And, from looking from the outside, what did you think could have been done differently? You did talk about taking it baby steps, right? But some people would argue that in the times that we're in, you just need to move very quickly because you don't want to be left behind.
Yeah, I've seen things like that before, and what I've learned is, one, you have to create a framework for digital transformation within your firm.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are parts of your business that are friendly to digital transformation, and there are parts of your business that perhaps do not require as much innovation.
That's true.
To be very frank.
Fair enough.
I'll give you a good example. I mean, like, look, if you're a business that sells, a certain kind of service to high net worth individuals,
right?
You can't just tell your people to go e-commerce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're selling a product of millions of dollars to families, high net worth families. Part of the benefit is that they know you and you know them. And
True.
You know what I mean?
That personal touch.
There's a service element to that business, and I want to advise you take that, like, digitally transform that process, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But there are probably things about where you source, how you source, what you need to do, how you build products, how you appeal to the design and stuff that you can subject to a digital transformation process. Mm-hmm. You can build new units that appeal to a different segment of the market that's perhaps not the high net worth, that can leverage digital transformation as an enabler. But what I suggest usually is create a lab. Just build a lab.
Okay.
And when I say lab, I don't mean a physical lab with lab. I mean just an area of the company where whoever's driving digital transformation with NextGen or whatever can experiment.
Right. That makes sense.
But make sure that as you send them into that lab, they have context about what the business actually is.
Of course.
I think the worst ideas have come from people who have an idea of what the business is, but don't really understand what makes the business tick. They haven't really had the opportunity to have the knowledge fully transferred to them. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
I do, yeah.
And this changes everything.
It does. It will stifle the entire
process. You spend all your time. Yeah. So, I mean, you spend all your time, pushing, but you don't get very far that way.
Yeah, because you don't have the buy-ins, because people don't understand.
Because they don't really understand the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think my advice usually is create a lab. Okay. At the very least, they'll learn the business. They'll learn to understand the business.
But in create a lab, would this also be beneficial to the older generation, right? Because this, again, may look like something that's peculiar to the younger generation. Do you think that's like so maybe it's not a surefire way to get their buy-in, but are you suggesting that it's one of the ways to at least get their buy-in? So that way you're testing and showing. Yeah. So it's almost like a show and tell. I think definitely. Yeah. And what I've seen some really good families do is really deepen that intergenerational solidarity. Okay. By regular meetups of the family to talk about the business and different perspectives. And I find that when the older generation and the younger generation get together to share ideas with evidence and so on and so forth, I don't want to call names, but I worked with this one family that we used to organize demo days for. Oh, right. Right? And basically, the older guys in the family would sit down and the younger people would sit down in this, really nice room in Southern Sun. Right. And they'll tell us, bring businesses in our area. We want to talk to them together. Right. And so after each company comes and pitches, they may give money, but sometimes they just ask themselves questions. Oh, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? And there's so much knowledge about what has been tried before, right, and failed, and what is new that is shared in that conversation. Interesting. You get what I'm trying to say? Yes, yes. And that family has managed to stay relevant, right? Because of that intergenerational interaction. I don't know if you get my point. I absolutely do. And you know why? I get it because this sounds to me like what is referred to as digital openness. So which is basically the openness of the family business to digital transformation. And, one question I was going to ask you is do you think there's an African factor? And what you've described to me sounds almost foreign, where the older generation are actually happy to sit in that room and hear those pitches. So I think that definitely it's one of the paths. That openness needs to happen first for them to be interested to even understand and see how these things work and, across generations. So yeah, I mean, this is a Nigerian family, by the way. So fantastic. I don't think it's an African factor. Exactly. So, good to know. Good to know. But I think that there's something to be said for power distance within families. Okay. So if you have a patriarch who's like thundering, you must do my will, right? It's very hard to have that conversation. Yeah. But true. I feel like the nature of families are changing such that, this is not the 1970s. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
I think you have a new generation of parents who are much closer to their kids, much more willing to listen to their perspectives on issues.
Very true.
And so it's an easier sell.
Yeah.
And I think for those who are not following that path, you have to, right? Because your kids are your eyes and ears into the world.
That's right.
You know? And getting them into the family business is not a function of just giving them the MD title the day you feel like you need to go retire.
Yeah. That's
you gotta ease them into the business. Help them understand what are the deeper secrets of doing the business. The families I've worked with that are amazing, and it's not just one family or two family or three families.
Okay.
It's several, right? I've worked with where, this intergenerational solidarity where the daughter can talk to the father and say,
Fantastic.
hey, I don't agree.
Yeah.
And this is how I think we can run it. And this will give us better results. I mean, these are critical. These are very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I mean, so it's refreshing to hear, that you've worked with a lot of Nigerian family businesses and you see that intergenerational connection and conversation going on. So that suggests to me that at least there's some level of openness going on. So from the PwC survey, we found that 40% of the NextGen family members from 31 countries say that they feel frustrated because they can't communicate their ideas on digitization to the family members. I think that we've sort of touched up on this, on how best to engage the older generation. Are there any other tips or ideas from your experience interacting with these family businesses on the best way to communicate their ideas on digitization to the senior family members?
Yeah. I think to run a family business well, you got to be very curious about what the core of the business is.
Okay.
However mundane it sounds. So, some of my best friends who are, family business owners.
Okay. Or NextGens
will tell
themselves.
You that, sorry?
So are they the family business owners or are they the next generation?
They're the next generation.
Okay.
I wouldn't be. I don't know. I have best friends I don't have friends I have older friends, but
Okay.
It's a family business.
Right.
But they tell me about how they started in the family business. And what I find admiring about the approach they took was, even though they come from very heavy technology backgrounds and they had all this knowledge about how the world works, they still humble themselves to understand at a very granular level what is the work that delivers us profit every day,
Fantastic.
right? And I find that, and this, to be very fair, these are, I found a lot more receptiveness to doing that kind of grunt work from like the Lebanese families and Indian families.
Okay.
Because, and they can speak intelligently about the business. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that they're not BSing in terms of like, they're not trying to make their business a US business or a UK business, right? They're just trying to deal with, this is the business we have, right? Now, that makes them a lot smarter about where technology can actually play a role. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's not just a window dressing effort.
Absolutely.
The knowledge of where technology can help comes from a deep place
of understanding.
You understand
the
what
core
I'm
of
saying?
The business and what makes it tick.
I was saying that what makes these guys exceptional is that they have a very deep business of the core of the business, right? They have absorbed a historical knowledge of how what has been tried before and failed.
Right.
They have an understanding of what the leverage points of the business are.
Yeah.
They know the flaw. A lot of these guys are in like manufacturing, piping. I mean, you can imagine. I have a friend who worked for a global multinational tech company.
Right.
Comes back to Nigeria and he's in the pipe business.
Wow. How do you
bring
bring technology into that?
This is why we do piping, right?
Yes.
Exactly. But you see, he's thinking about how you bring technology into that, but in very different ways from, say, a consultant who's never been in the business. Right. Or somebody who has a cursory understanding of his family's business.
Gotcha.
I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
I totally do.
And that's the difference, I think, oftentimes, is that you're dealing with somebody on the other side of the table who understands this business just as well as the older gen, but at the same time understands where technology and innovation can help them achieve the right kind of competitive advantage, whether it's cost reduction, or value addition. or retention, right?
Yeah.
So you're not talking somebody who's like has all these fairy tale ideas.
Right.
The guy knows the business and he knows
it.
what will move the needle, and he's focused on that.
Fantastic. So, I mean, in a nutshell, what you're essentially saying is it's easier to get the buy-in of the older generation when there's when they have the comfort that you understand the business and what's critical to the success of that business. And then they can be more open to whatever technological innovative ideas that you have. Makes perfect sense. But you did mention, the Lebanese family, and I'm thinking, okay, so is that the same? Would that be the same? And would the hold true for, the Nigerian businesses that you've interacted with?
Yeah, I guess the difference, with the Nigerian businesses, what I've noticed
is
that the Nigerian businesses maybe bring their kids in a little later,
okay,
than the Lebanese and Indian families do,
right?
And there's, there isn't perhaps as much dinner table conversation around what the business is and what kind of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, and also when they bring them in, they kind of bring them in at a very high level. They don't give them an opportunity to work their way up the floor.
Right.
But I find that those are the more deliberate about bringing the members in to work the floor and kind of grow. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Help. They're able to instill a much sounder understanding of the business.
Fantastic.
Into their young ones,
mm-hmm.
and this helps when they suggest technology innovation.
They're able to buy in.
I mean, they have friends, they have peers, they have people like me. They'll ask me about stuff, and I'll tell them what I can. And it's a lot easier for me to have that conversation with NextGen than it is for me to have the conversation with the parents, right?
Of course.
Because I can challenge their thinking, I can suggest things. I wouldn't be able to do that
with the older generation.
A 60-year-old doyen of industry, I was just saying yes.
But you see, there is that African factor.
I think you need to think in this way about it.
Yes.
Yeah, you are saying there is an African
As I said, there is the African factor. If even you are thinking of the challenge of interacting with the older generation and giving them ideas and knowing that there's the potential of them not being as receptive. So it's that, for me, it's that, our patriarchal norm of I'm the founder and I'm the owner and I know what's best and not necessarily open to any new ideas because I think I know if I'm the vision holder, I know where this is going and I know what's best to get us there. On the other hand, I do hear you when you say that if I'm able to also then demonstrate, hopefully the other party or the older generation is a bit more open. If I'm able to demonstrate deep understanding and communicate to you, convincingly that, your business isn't changing and this in fact is going to take it where you're going to, then it should be easier to sell to them. Okay, so thank you for that. I'll just have you answer one more question before we end this episode. And it's just for you to share your thoughts on, so for my survey, right, there's been suggestion that an optimal approach is to have a digital advisory board in the family business that comprises, both external and internal parties that are digitally savvy. What is your opinion on this? Is this indeed an optimal approach?
So my opinion is there are many good reasons, right, to have a digital advisory board. Mm-hmm. But the danger that people who go this approach face is basically you're going to create like a schism between the cooperating entity and the digital advisory entity. And it's dangerous, primarily because you can create a challenge for yourself, where, the people in the cooperating entity look at that digital advisory board as a bunch of people just saying their stuff, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they don't have any understanding of the priorities of the company and everything, right?
Yeah.
And this can be challenging, but I think that a better way to do it, in my opinion, is to have a respected digital, somebody with understanding of digital, a little bit of understanding of your business on the actual board. Just one young person that you trust or that your family trusts. Give your next gen one board seat.
Okay, makes
right,
sense.
on the board.
Right.
Have the NextGen themselves on the board.
Okay.
So that way they're in a better position to kind of steer the core operating company into the new approach, right?
Right.
And people would naturally, because everybody knows that the NextGen is leading the company, they wouldn't naturally question, you understand, in the way that people will. Also, information would likely travel to you as the patriarch, as the chairman or the patriarch or the owner faster. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
Because they can tell you over dinner, they can tell you, so kind of do that to keep an eye on things. But my advice is don't, I worry about creating a separate
standalone
institution.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to get into trouble.
Right. So essentially what you're saying is to have experts incorporated into the existing board and maybe of a younger generation as well to be able to represent, that younger generational view. Correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
On the actual board.
On the actual board, yes. Absolutely, not as a separate standalone. Absolutely. That makes sense. So thank you very much for that, Iyi. And we're going to end the episode with you sharing your 2 top recommendations for business continuity or succession planning in Africa with your experience working with different family businesses. So, what would you recommend?
Okay, so I think the first recommendation, if you don't mind me making that 3, my first recommendation is clarify who you serve. Clarify who you want to serve. Clarify who you serve and clarify where you want to take them with your product. Okay. It's very important that everybody understands beyond what you do day to day, why you do what you do, especially when you're thinking about digital transformation, because this is the part that gets lost oftentimes. People just ignore that, and then they start doing digital transformation for the sake of it, and nothing happens, right? The second thing, get your younger people involved in the actual business, right? So that you can build trust with them, to be able to give you suggestions about how you can optimize, or you can add value, or you can retain customers in your business, or build a relationship with customers in your business. Right. But that's what digital transformation enables you to do. It enables you to either reduce the cost, increase value, and retain customers. Right. Right? Absolutely. Anything else, digital transformation cannot do it. Those are, you go talk to your banker or your governor or your politician. Digital transformation cannot do more than those 3 things. Right. Right? Okay. So start to get your kids involved in the business so they can start giving you ideas. Right. And over time, build an interaction with them where you can shut down their ideas in a friendly way, and you give them an opportunity to build out some, which leads me to my third point. Right. Create a lab. Assign a budget to a lab. Right? It can be a different brand of your business. Okay. And you say, hey, kids, this is your own side of the business, right? You experiment. Put on the main side, you're on the board, you're all that, but this is your side of the business. Okay. Experiment here. I'll give you, 200 million or 100 million or 50 million for you to experiment. Anything that works really well here, bring it to my side.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's what I advise. Yeah.
So Iyi, I'll just ask, I know I did say this was the last. Yeah. Fantastic. And I know I did say that this is the last bit of the episode, but I'm just curious to know, so do you see yourself being a family business owner and basically inviting your next generation into the family business and what you do differently?
Well, to be very honest, I have a 2-year-old, right? Okay. So I want to see what she's interested in. Okay. I'm not emotional enough about businesses to want to hold on to them forever. I see them as vehicles for God's work. So okay. I love them and leave them. So I don't know if I'm a family business type of guy. Well,
thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
If my daughter wants to get into the business, sure, why not?
Why not?
But I'm the kind of guy who's just going to find investors and them.
So you just build, operate, and transfer.
My regular returns. Let me go. Let me be.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much, Iyi. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and it's been a very engaging conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Absolutely a pleasure being here.
Fantastic.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Bye. We have come to the end of this episode of NextGen Talks. Thank you for listening as always.
NextGen Talks is an initiative of PwC Nigeria's NextGen Club, featuring family business owners, NextGens, successful entrepreneurs, and professionals. NextGen Talks, shaping the African family business narrative.